Leadership is personal work with public consequences. Before we try to influence anyone or anything, we have to first examine our own beliefs, identities, and assumptions. So this season, we're unlearning what no longer serves us and becoming the leaders our future requires. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are in the Leadership Lounge with your host, me, Dr. Shanesia Davis, where we just embark on a journey for better leadership. Every week, we tell you it's not about arrival. It is only about a journey to discover yourself better so that you may be able to lead the people better. Today, look, folks, I'm trying so hard to keep myself together. Forgive me if I look like an entire geek today. I have one of my favorite individuals in the entire world on the show today, the brilliant Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz, who is a mom. She's a daughter. She's an educator. She's a professor at Teachers College, Columbia University, and she is an author. We'll be talking about her book today. Not the first one, might I add. And here she is. Say hello to everyone.
My gosh. Hello, Leadership Lounge. How excited I am to be here watching the episodes of the previous folks, Dr. Shanesia, that you have interviewed, what I've learned from them. It is such an honor to be here. I'm just ready to, as I would say, dig in, but I'm also ready to kind of lay back on the chair in the lounge and see where it takes us.
Yay. Yay. Look, this whole taping, I'm just hoping that my muscles and my face still work afterwards.
I can't stop smiling. I can't stop.
I literally can't. Our theme for this entire season is unlearning and becoming. There's some stuff we got to get rid of before we become fully who we are, who we designed to be. And today's episode is Excavation before transformation. A lot of what we'll be discussing today is coming straight from the book. Let's get a good angle here. Yes, Archaeology of Self. Please go get this book. It is so important. And do not be fooled. It says educators. Listen, if you're in leadership, you're an educator. Go get this book. You're learning and you're educating folks. Go get this book. It will change the way you look at some of your practices, the way you look at yourself. But no sense in me chatting about it because we have the author in the room in the lounge today. And I want to start with, so today's title, like I said, is Excavation Before Transformation. And you start this book. Not many people do start professional body of work from where you're from. Can you please let us know why you chose to do that?
Yes, thank you for the question. The title Archaeology of Self, which are some of the workshops I've been doing, part of the racial literacy model that I've designed. And to be authentic, I don't think that I can ask people to do self-work, self-digging without sharing my own artifacts. So what's so important, I think, for leaders, and I do want to say that chapter 9 is actually dedicated specifically to leaders. I don't want to jump the gun, but I had to start chapter 1 with where I'm from, the South Bronx, how it raised me, what it taught me about racial literacy, what it taught me about inequity, what it taught me about schooling and education from a student perspective growing up in the South Bronx to someone eventually becoming a teacher. So as leaders, as people, teachers, we have to start with thinking about where we're from and how it influences the way that we see the world. So that's why I started it with that. It felt like the most authentic step to take, particularly in a book titled Archaeology of Self. How am I going to jump and ask people to do self-work and I'm not revealing any part of myself? It's not authentic.
And I just, it takes courage. It takes courage, especially in a world as a Black woman, that we're taught to put so many pieces of ourselves down. And now in this literary piece of art, you say, I'm going to have to start with who I am first. Can you bring us give us a little insight on when, if you can pinpoint something or what specific incident or a series of incidences let you know what? No, I know the world says, hide these pieces. These are important for what I'm doing. How did you come to that?
Sister, I don't think we can grow up in places like Harlem, the South Bronx at a particular time and not be aware of how the world sees you. And also figuring out who we are by looking at our neighbors, by looking at the dynamics of our family. So I would have to say early on, and being also a child of the hip hop movement, that's a very special coming of age type of environment. So to be 13, 14, where this cultural phenomenon explodes in all of your neighborhoods, you don't realize that it's international. You're just kind of getting through it. You know how it's making you feel, is speaking back against the police, is speaking back against injustice. So I think relatively early growing up in the South Bronx, the birthplace of hip hop, I was very conscious, but the consciousness didn't really hit. And when you talk about what particular event, I would have to say is when I was in corporate America, and specifically around my hair, because being around so many white people, like white people everywhere, Black women in particular, have this extra layer of consciousness about how they look. And I remember having braids at the time. I had perms, the perm was taking out my hair, and I put in braids. And I remember going to a sales call at Paragon. I don't know if it's still there on 14th Street. I was part of the sports team. And the CEO of Paragon was in the meeting, and I had on like a African choker. I had my braids. She reached over and touched my braids and then stroked my necklace. This is in a meeting. And she said, "Oh, you look so primitive."
Primitive. I just had to make sure that I got the word right.
And I wish I had a clap back at that time. But here I was, all of maybe 21. I'm here with my boss. My boss was stunned, little white lady. My coworker was stunned, a white woman. And this woman thought she gave me a compliment. And that was a turning point for me around corporate America. I made sure I stayed with my braids, never permed my hair again. And then by the time I got I've been a professor at Kingsborough Community College. I've done a few things, NYU. But when I got into, let's say, Teachers College in my professorial positions, I transitioned to locking my hair. And that was another major moment for me. And I write about it in the book, sis. So there are these moments, that we catch sense along the way. Sometimes it's something that someone says to us. Sometimes it's something that bubbles up in us. The key is to be present and to recognize that it's an opportunity for growth, even when somebody is trying to harm you.
How profound is that? That idea of presence. I often says that's what the enemy is after.
Ooh.
Our ability to be present. Because if we're really able to pick up on all of the things around us, if we're in tune with that, because you brought up the idea, you said we're hyper aware. We have to have this hyper awareness, and another tool meant to kind of stifle us. But that means we have the ability to be hyper aware. Imagine in our presence, us utilizing that long sharpened tool of hyper aware. Oh man, that's good. Okay. That's a whole sermon.
No, sis, you're on to something, and you're making me think about our ancestors. Can you imagine traveling with Harriet Tubman in the dead of night, reading the stars to get us to freedom, having to be hyper aware of everything, dogs that might come up, how we wade in the water. All of that has been passed to us, and we have been encouraged to desensitize ourselves from that. It's almost like that third eye that we have that's been passed down ancestrally. So no, sis, you are absolutely right. And the last thing I'll say is, in these last few years of really meditating more intensely, praying more intensely, it's such a beautiful thing to be fully present of your own evolution, to be present that you are actually changing, making change in your thinking. It's such a powerful experience to be present.
It really is. And that's why I say that's what the enemy is after, our ability to be present, because then that us being desensitized to those things, that's a moment that we aren't shifting, whether it be in ourselves or in the people around us. That's an opportunity that goes by. And I told you this before, but I heard a quote from the great Dr. Maya Angelou that reminded me of you. I told you about this.
Maya, yes.
And it said, when you get, give, and when you learn, teach. And that's what you're doing in this book.
Oh, sis, thank you.
Because then we move, you're welcome. When we move to, in chapter, I think it's 4, let me make sure I get it right.
And that's the chapter I'm talking about, Black folk, and the idea of archaeology and what Black archaeology can teach us about education.
And that's why I wanted to move there, specifically after our conversation of being hyper aware and what that could do for us if we're present. Because you talk about this idea of excavation as liberation. So when you talked earlier about pushing back at the systems growing up in the South Bronx during the birth and growing up of hip hop and what that did. And now you're writing about racial literacy and excavation as liberation. When you think about this, and because I really want to make it, I know you wrote about it in chapter 9. But this chapter is so important in understanding how do we utilize ourselves
Yes.
in the work that we do. So if I'm a leader, not an educator, I might be in a corporate building, I might be in a nonprofit. Can you talk to us a little bit about why this is so important as we're leading the folks that we're charged to lead?
My gosh, sis, yes, because if you don't know who you are, and what I mean by who you are, I don't just mean like what's your name, what's your birthplace. I mean like who you are, what triggers you, who you are, where your biases.
Yeah.
Who you are, where's that deep racism, that homophobia, that religious bias, and you are charged to lead people who will not be exactly like you. There's only one of us, but even folks who have similarities to you. If you don't do that self-work, it is going to affect how you lead. So I feel that it is so natural that part of leadership training or leadership development, rather, animals are trained, people are developed, is what is my story? And what is the story that led me to where I am? And that's where it can be the geography of the South. How does being from the South Bronx, teaching teachers who may end up teaching in the South Bronx, what does that mean for my classroom?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I know because now I'm going to be incoming chair of my department. I was a manager, director in corporate America. And the folk that I was leading were very different than me in terms of gender, race, socioeconomics, all of the things. So what it required is I had to have such a strong foundation in knowing who I am in order to navigate the difference, the beautiful difference that was around me. And so I think a disconscious leader will go in thinking, okay, my viewpoint, my value system, my is the way to do it, and not really consider how the way that you're thinking is deeply impacting the way someone else will move or not move on your team. So you have to know yourself. You have to know your triggers. You have to know your biases and do something about it. And then figure out how do you lead this team?
Yeah. And I appreciate you naming that because I was just speaking with another leader today and we were talking. I said, I really haven't met many leaders with malintent, even the ones I really didn't even like.
Yeah, we have a few of them.
Yeah, this on top of mine. I do not believe they had malintent. I fundamentally believe that the decisions that they're making from a place of great intention. Something in their value system that they're holding on to, something in their past that, kind of governs their decision making. And because of you, I have my new certification course coming out.
Oh my God. All right, wait, put on the brakes. Can you say more about it, sis? Because as a new chair of a department, I may need to take that certificate program. I'm serious. Because, it's, we all need refreshers and the world is always changing. And so leadership is different because people are different. So selfishly, but also for our listeners and our viewers, sis, can you say more about that?
Yes, it's a 4-part certificate series within my From Within suite. And the first certificate is identity-centered leadership. And it's because of that, I say the only person that is in every single decision you make, every single action you take, that common denominator is you. So if you're not in tune with what's governing your decision making, what's governing your actions or inactions, the things that you protect, the things that you ignore, the things that you allow, if you're not in tune with that, then we risk somebody other than us, our proxy, I like to call our proxy, leading that. And then that's what we tend to see is things not in alignment with what we actually intend.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about alignment. I was, viewing quite a few of your previous interviews. I think the last one that I saw was a sister who wrote a book. It's a yellow book. I just remember the image.
Tanisha.
Yes.
Yep.
And y'all were talking about alignment, being in alignment. And I would have to say that any professional development that I have experienced in corporate, no one was talking about alignment. It's like, what that? I only learned that language through meditation and also, through prayer, if you go to church or synagogue or mosque, is your life in alignment with what God wants it to be?
Yes.
But the fact that you are engaging people in alignment conversations as leaders, we need it.
Thank you. Thank you. Especially coming from you. Thank you. I'll work out these jaw muscles here. Okay.
Me too.
Yeah, that's what I call leadership integrity. When your values and the conditions that you reinforce when they're all in alignment. That's what I call leadership integrity. And you in chapter 5, what I loved is that then you went on to challenge folks. You say, okay, now look at yourself.
Get the mirror.
Let's practice. But I love how the book is interactive in the way that you allow folks not to just ingest. You really breathe this opportunity of excavation because you give breathable moments to do that.
Thank you.
To do that. Well, how did you come to say, you know what, this needs to happen in this book? Because it's so intentional, it seems.
Thank you for saying that. And that is feedback that I have been getting, that people have been saying, my goodness, this is so intentional. And it was. It absolutely was. And I think because of how the origin of the book came out of me speaking. So what I mean by that is when I was approached to write this book, I was not interested in writing a book. But people kept saying, do you have anything longer on archaeology itself? And then, suddenly or finally, Paul Gorski, a series editor, said, Yoli, would you like to write a book? And I said, no, not really. He said, you could do it on archaeology itself. You could put poetry in it. It can be anything you want. And as soon as he said poetry, doctor, I said yes. So that was the hook. I'm just going to be honest about that. And then I have to say, I have to give a nod to my bestie, Dr. Goldie Muhammad, because her last 2 books, Cultivating Genius and Unearthing Joy, has taken education by storm.
Yes.
And it's in part, sis, because Goldie was very deliberate in talking to teachers. Yes, she can do all of that theory. We all can. We got our doctorates. We know how to do that. But the bottom line was, what is the theory to practice? And that is actually how I teach and how I live. I love theory, but there is nothing more practical than a theory that can manifest in the classroom. So when you ask me, was I intentional? Absolutely. Even in my language, which is why it was important for me to start as I did in the introduction, or even with Howard Stevenson writing the foreword. This was a brilliant scholar at UPenn. And look at the way he opens up. He's talking about LL Cool J. Mama gonna knock you out. He's talking about his family. He's weaving in, yes, statistics, but he's talking about the lion story. And as long as the hunter is telling the story of the lion, then we will never really know the truth. So just using that kind of language, sis, even the letter from the sisterhood, the letter co-written by Bettina and Dina and Goldie, look at how it's written. So I don't have to prove anything that, I got this degree and I can use these words. The bottom line, thank you, sis. But the bottom line is, can I write something that is meaningful to your life? Because then why bother? If this podcast, sister, that you're doing, the certificate that you're doing, if all the things that you're doing are just to serve you and your name and your brand, we're missing the mark.
And I just love well, first of all, I had these cool questions, but bump them because
no, you got cool questions. You're just getting me so excited.
Because as you speak, then I'm like, oh, when you brought up specifically one of your members in the sisterhood, Bettina Love, Dr. Bettina Love, she said something one time that I'm hearing all in this now. When she said, and please quote, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something like truth becomes policy. And when she said that, it was so important because it's like, she was talking about like, who's telling the truth? So who's writing the truth? So when you talk about like, if the hunter is writing the story for the lion, it's going to sound a whole different way.
Yes.
So the fact that you're writing this, starting with this is who I am, and then given opportunities for us to discover if we hadn't yet, or be able to discover deeper, who am I? In so many different facets, because like you said, not only do you have poetry, you have artwork. Not only do you have artwork, you got to get this book. She got playlists. She has playlists, little QR codes that you can scan and listen to the playlist because it's the wholeness, the oneness of us.
Yes.
That is our truth.
That just gave me chills because you just put in that sentence the whole intent of the book. And I think you verbalized it for me. I didn't even have the language where I want this to be a whole experience for people. I don't want them to leave any parts of themselves. I want them to bring their full self for examination, what they love in terms of their music, what art makes them excited, poetry, sadness, how they overcame. Like I want it all somehow to be in conversation with this book, all towards becoming a better individual, better, meaning more compassionate, more kind, untethering from hate, racism, and all of that. Better teacher, a better leader. You just gave me language, and I thank you.
My goodness, forgive me,
I
people.
feel that way too, sis. No, I'm so grateful to be in your presence and the joy that you bring to leadership. Like from the moment I logged on, I just feel like joyful. I feel like entering the leadership lounge, even though we're on like Zoom or Riverside, whatever this is, I feel like I'm in a physical space with you, that my body is vibrating from joy. Look at that. I use my hands. Always told, okay, don't use your hands so much. But when I'm excited, I use my hands.
And our ability to be your whole self.
And
right?
my whole self. I'm my
Your
whole self right now.
And I
You
appreciate
invited me in. You invited me in.
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. That means the entire world to me.
Mm.
And when we think about, right, this oneness of ourselves, then that makes me think about this because I feel like somebody may need to hear it, right? We have some of us, especially Black women, who say, that sounds good. You don't get it where I am, right? You don't know what I'm specifically dealing with. I wish I could. That sounds good. I wish I could bring my full self to the space, but I can't here. Do you have a message for them?
I do. Not bringing your full self, you little by little lose yourself.
Ooh.
And you are going to one day and wake up and figure out or ask yourself, who am I? But why must we bend to organizations and places that don't want us there to begin with? We have to understand that we are there with a purpose. We are there from something higher than the people around us. And so if we contort ourselves and try to blend in and that's not going to make them love us anymore. So think about this. You're contorting, you're not getting love, you're contorting, and you're losing yourself. I would rather be me, and not lose myself in an environment that doesn't want me there in the first place. But I understand why I'm there because God has me there.
And I think, for me, that's the larger, like, that's the larger landing pad for me. Because I too struggle with being able to, right? I say, even for marketing, I'm like, oh, okay, it's difficult to really sell myself, right? Quote unquote. That feels uncomfortable, right? And one of the previous podcasts, she's on episode 1, she coined the term toxic humility.
Yes.
And her episode is about overcoming that. And she posed a question: what's the cost of you shrinking?
That's it right there. And here's the other thing I want to say too, that you can also be in an environment, and when your spirit says this is enough, this is not for me, or when you want to interrupt yourself because you find you realize that you've given up too much, you're losing too much, then you leave, which is why it's so important to know thyself. Because when you do get to that threshold that it's too much, then you move on. So this knowing yourself is the gift that keeps giving, because it is going to allow you to make the difficult decisions to completely leave, completely walk away if you have to. Also, knowing yourself will give you the gift to maintain and to stand firm in an environment that wants you to shrink.
That's true. That's it right there.
And all of these environments want us to shrink, even when they're Black owned, because we are living in a racist society, and that seeps into the culture of every organization.
And we don't know it. And not only do we not know it, here comes the real crazy part is that not only do we not know it, we defend it.
As my friend Yolanda would say,
we defend it. And you say in the book, right? You have this thing. You said, and it's so funny. I haven't look at God. I have my finger on this little quote so that I can make sure I come to it.
Which one was it, sis? Which one?
The most dangerous biases are actually disguised as care. And so similarly, what I'm thinking, right? So when we defend it. There's things that we defend in the systems, right, in our practices, because we've adopted them. We've been swimming around in that culture so long. We've adopted them as helpful or necessary or protective.
Yeah.
And it seems silly not to do it.
Yeah. And it seems scary to do something different. Sis.
That's it.
It's fear is at a lot of this. And also these jobs, we're tethered to, it's our mortgage payment. It's how we take care of our family. We're not here being Pollyannish. We're not saying, just leave your job. We know the reality. So if we're living in reality and you know this, why would you still want to give up your soul and who you are? If you know the reality of this society, would you not figure out how to navigate it? Would you not try to figure out that when you are actually yourself in full effect, that you give permission for other people to be themselves in full effect?
100%. And that's so important because please go get this book. Because, right, I was a teacher. I wish I had something like this when I was a teacher. I wish I had something like this when I was a school principal. You know what I mean? Grateful that I have this now in the work that I'm doing, working with leaders. You're welcome. Because I did this anti-racist training. I talked about this on the show before, and I was really mad about doing the anti-racist training because it was like a 4-day thing, and I was aggravated. I'm like, you know how much I could be doing in 4 days? I'm a Black woman in America. I don't need anti-racist training.
Oh, hello.
That's what I thought, right? So did this anti-racist training, and it was on a scale from racist to anti-racist. Clearly, when they showed the scale, cool. I know I'm an anti-racist because I'm a Black woman in America. I do this all day, right?
Hello.
But wrong. I was actually an assimilist. I was an assimilist, and I had taught for all of those years, and I had been a leader. I've been a school principal already, and at this point, I was a director. And I found out then that I was an assimilist.
You were swimming in the water, sis, like you said.
Yeah.
You swim in the water. And Beverly Daniel Tatum talks about the racism. It's like in the air we breathe. It's in the clouds above us. And you're right. We make excuses. We justify. We lean on some of the practices that we know are harmful for children, for other adults, and for ourselves. And when it's so connected to money and what's deemed as success, it becomes harder and harder to untether from it. And that's why it's important to do this kind of self-work along the way. We're constantly evolving. This is not a one and done. Let me go. Even when I went for a 10-day silent retreat, that is the gift that keeps giving. But I'm very different. Even in 2018, when I did the retreat than where I am now, I have to constantly do this self-work. And doctor, I have to do it around who I am as an educator, who I am as a mother, who am I as a daughter, who am I as a daughter who lives with her mother and her daughter at times, right? So I am that in-between generation.
Yeah.
I do it in terms of romantic love. I do the archaeology around that. What do I believe it means to love me?
Oof.
So the model.
That's the whole show.
Oof. And I want to thank you because you said, don't be fooled by the title, because I'm hoping that people see the model applicable to their lives and the various roles that we carry, whether it's mother, daughter, teacher, lover, friend. We can do that archaeological work.
Not only can we do it, it's necessary to do it.
It's necessary to do it. It's necessary.
To do it. So this is such important work. And like I said, I was an assimilist, and I'm sitting here thinking, and again, back to my point about intent, I had the best intentions. It was out of safety, right? Out of fear. I was teaching my students and the teachers as well, right, to do certain things, right? I taught my kids how to code switch, how to play the game, and because it was important, it helped me, right? It helped me get to where I was.
Sissy, you know what's so wild as we look at the news? I was looking at some Republican person, I don't know their name, with all the immigration stuff going on and the horror that's happening to Syrian and to Haitian folks and now targeting Somali folks. So this person said, there is no way, if you are from, he was talking specifically about Somalia, that you can assimilate into American society. There's no room for your assimilation, which interestingly has been the bedrock of what this country has wanted people to do. So even let's say,
talk about it.
Depending on your background, drop the certain part of your name and let your name sound more American.
Yeah.
Right? Straighten your hair, Black people, so that you can look more American. It doesn't matter what you do, change your name, change your whatever. Fundamentally, this country does not believe that you can fit in. And so I want to ask you, how did it feel for you to discover that, wow, here I am, this Black woman doing this work, and I'm really an assimilationist? I
felt bamboozled. I was pissed. I was mad. I was mad at me, right? I was, because I consider myself an intelligent person. I'm like, how did that wool get pulled over my eyes? Like,
you're not alone.
I became a mouthpiece for it, right? And I bring back, like, not saying, right, anyone is the enemy, but what I'm saying is that that's how the enemy works in our lives as well. Even with that, that's why it's important for us to dig and excavate within ourselves, because once we start believing the lies, we become a mouthpiece of the lies. The enemy don't even have to do nothing, right? Sit back. Because now we're continuing it. And that's what I was doing. And you talking about the systems. I mean, really, when we get down to a public education in the beginning was to assimilate.
Yes, period.
Right? So the very foundation of it is assimilation. So that's why this is so important, right? If you're a leader of any sort, it's important. If you're an educator, it's a staple. I know our intentions are great, but without us doing the digging, right, we can unconsciously repeat some of the very behaviors that created why this gap is so large in the first. We're contributing to it unknowing.
That's exactly it. You just gave, and like you're brilliant, like in 10 seconds, that's the whole thesis of the book, period. And the only thing that I do is I offer excavation exercises. I tell a little of my story. I offer tools. I offer resources. I share stories of my students. I share their artwork. I share songs that have been impactful for me along my journey. I share how I came to healing centered education, because once you recognize the damage of racism, which is what you were just talking about, you recognize you have to heal.
Yeah.
All of us have to heal, no matter what side of, if you're benefiting from the racism or if it's you're catching hell from it.
Yeah.
Everyone has to heal because we're actually tethered together. You might think that you're separate, but if I have to, as Auntie Toni Morrison would say, when she was talking to Charlie Rose, she said, if someone else has to be on their knees in order for you to feel tall, there's something wrong with you. And that is the structure in a white supremacist country like this, that white folks feel, not all white folks, I'm talking about the structure, that Black folks have to be on their knees in order for them to have this superiority.
In order for some control
That's
to be maintained.
That's not human. That's not dealing with
not our original design.
Humanity. It's not our original design. And so I'm trying to get people back to the original design of love, of compassion, of self-reflection, of self-grace, and of action. That once you realize I am doing this in my practice, that you recognize that it doesn't have to stay that way. It doesn't have to stay that way.
It doesn't have to stay that way. I was doing yoga one time, and the yoga instructor, Steph Galante, she said, where you start is not where you're stuck.
Ooh, that's a t-shirt.
It is, right? She said, where you start is not where you're stuck. And that's what I love about the practices that you give, because it's like, okay, all right, we got it. It was stung. Okay, you realized something, but now we could do something different.
Yes.
Right. And I love that you brought up practice, because and that's the whole point of this show, is to take the shame out of the fall sometimes. My mama, God rest her soul, she'd say, when you fall, just don't wallow. So, we're going to fall. We're human. Right? We're going to fall. We're going to go back to our defaults because we've been wired like this. So when we go back to our defaults, as we start to close out, I think this is a good place, because we're going to fall back into our defaults. We're going to do the things that have helped us get to where we are, feel a little bit more comfortable doing. It feels a little uncomfortable changing our practices. So if you could give us some practical advice, or like something that you would say, okay, you're going to fall into your default. When you fall into that old way of thinking, when you start living below your design, right? When you fall in, this is what you do.
Yes. It's a few things, sis, and they're very, very practical. First and foremost, if you can afford it, if you have insurance, but there's also a lot of places like Loveland Industries that offers free therapy or sliding scale therapy, particularly for women of color, Black women. My thing is, be in therapy. And therapy looks different for everyone. What's beautiful about therapy is that it's an opportunity to just focus on you and to go as deep as you're willing to go, to hold up the mirror so that you can make change. And that therapy, whether it's group therapy, individual therapy, is actually giving you the muscle of when I feel this certain way, how do I switch to that? Because that's really what therapy is all about. Okay, so you did this, you messed up. How would you do it differently next time? Right. Then I think particularly for educators or anybody that has kept a journal before, keep a video, audio, or handwritten journal. When the moment happens, document it, but also document in a reflexive way. If it happens again, the feeling comes up again, what you will do. And then have actual practices as simple as when you're feeling a certain heaviness, go out and take a walk. We happen to know that when you're taking a walk or engaging in any kind of exercises, we know that there's certain endorphins or hormones that are released that do impact you to give you a clearer head. You ever hear anybody say, I need to figure something out, I'm going to take a walk? Or sometimes people need to take a shower. So I want people to not see that it's all the way out there, that
That's good.
making a change in yourself, creating new habits comes in small ways. The everyday, taking a walk, taking a shower, calling a friend, praying, meditating, reading something positive, reading something that's going to take you to the next level of your evolution, but also in bigger ways, like seeking therapy and being humble enough to recognize you need professional help because you see the patterns and you're not breaking the patterns fast enough. And the patterns are negative. So that's, I hope that that helps.
It does. But I know that I've heard you say it too, so I'm going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Music.
My gosh.
Right? Because you do this all the time. I love that. And you've invited people to, I know a workshop that I sat through, you've invited us to create a playlist for our lives. Because sometimes, right, it's that presence, talking about that presence, to be able to snap us back into, yeah, I've been here before.
I'm so grateful you brought that up because I will tell you when I have been at my lowest, and this has been choosing divorce, people passing away, but specifically when I was going through a divorce, Maxwell's Embrace album saved me. It's amazing how the brain works because even when I am needing to just decompress, I go to Maxwell. And I love a lot of artists from the Motown sound. I love the Ink Spots. I love jazz. This is what I grew up in. Of course, I love hip hop.
Right.
But there's something about the sounds of Maxwell that calm my central nervous system and bring me back to center. So I'm glad you brought that up, sis, because I think we all should have that healing playlist. Whether it's sounds of water or whether it's sounds of blackness, have the healing playlist and just turn it on. I also burn candles. I also burn sage. So it's these little things. For some people, that might be incense because aromatherapy is a thing. And these are things that we can do in our office at work as well as home. Well, you might not want to burn incense at work. You don't want to start a fire. Get fire.
Yeah, some oil diffusers.
Okay, diffusers. So aromatherapy, sis. Even going to the bathroom and closing the door, which is what I used to do as a teacher, and put my legs up on the stool and just hold myself and take a moment to pray or take a moment to breathe. And that's where I'll end. I will end that. Develop a very simple breathing practice because when you can do that, in that breathing practice, it prevents you from popping off. And sometimes people are going to push you that the first thing you want to do is pop off. If you're a leader, first of all, anyone, you don't want to get in the habit of that. It's really not good for your central nervous.
No, it's not.
But particularly as a leader, because you're held to a higher level, everybody's watching how you do, what you do, and when you do it, take a breath. Even if you're in the middle of a conversation, you can say to the person, can we pause this for now? I just need to take a moment to think about this. I'll circle back to you.
I love that ability.
What somebody's going to tell you can't have time?
Right.
So what I'm saying is cultivate, whether it's in language, whether it's in practice, the small practices or a larger practice, yoga you mentioned, meditation, therapy, have both. So you can have this in your own personal toolkit. Or what I call, when you excavate artifacts, there's artifacts.
Yeah.
I talk about artifacts. And these are those deep moments that are often connected to trauma or some deep emotions. You need to be ready on standby about how to heal when you're doing that level of excavation. So, yeah.
That was such a beautiful way to kind of bring everything back together. Is there something that you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I want to tell you the first thing that comes to mind is to continue to listen to your podcast. And I want to say, sis, that I've been on a lot of podcasts, and this one by far has been the most natural and beautiful and welcoming for me. And I know that by the way that I've been touching my hair, the way that I've been doing the things that I do if I were alone. So yes, I'm engaged in this beautiful conversation with you, but I feel so completely myself. I would just encourage people to continue to follow you, follow what you're up to. Find out more about Leadership Lounge. Find out more about that certificate that you're offering and be in your presence because you have a magic and a way about you, even on screen, on Zoom, that you put people at ease.
Thank you so much. Trying not to cry up on here.
It's all true.
I never had a crying moment just yet.
I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful fellowshipping with you. May the Leadership Round reach millions of people, and may when they listen that they find hope.
Love you so much. Thank you. Thank you for always being willing to give of yourself, whether it's a hug, that stunning smile of yours, your unmatched brilliance. I mean, literally, your unmatched brilliance, your willingness to reach back and pull up your ability to be vulnerable enough to excavate yourself so that other people can follow that path. You're not just telling people what to do and how to do it. You show them how to do it with your life. You continue to do the work in every space that you walk into. And if everybody, please go get this book. I can just leave you with something that usually helps me when I'm reluctant is it's not about you. If you Sometimes that pushes me when I'm like, I don't know. But when I realize it's really not about me, it's about the people who are experiencing me, I'll say that's why you need to go get this book, because the people who are experiencing you deserve your best version of you, your complete version of you, your original design version of you. So please go get this book because it will aid you in doing that. Thank you all for joining the Leadership Lounge. A profound thank you, Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz. Thank you for gracing our space. I love you so much. And everyone, remember, it's not about a rival. There's no destination. It's just putting that one foot in front of the other to become the best version of yourself. Until next time, everyone. We'll see you in the Leadership Lounge. So happy you joined us in the lounge today. Go check out youandmeconsulting.com for services and products.